Hello, I am Bentham and welcome back to Factorio Town. So in the previous episode we set up a new town in the southwest desert which we named Westpoint, which as it turns out is the name of a location where a military academy is based in the US, which matches up quite well actually. The town that we built is a military installation essentially. It's for defense and building parachutes, so that matches up quite well. I'm wondering if the guy who suggested it even knew, because it is a fairly descriptive name anyway. But we got it all set up and we started working on the defensive systems, and today we are going to start working on the walls. It's been too long. We've been spending so much time like dealing with biter bases, and now we're going to finally sort of start bringing that to an end by stopping them from colonizing, by putting a wall in their way before they can set up their bases rather than dealing with them after they've set up the bases, which has so far proved to be time consuming and annoying and repetitive. So we're starting in the main base, we're resupplying on a bunch of stuff, and then we're using it all, because what we're trying to do is craft many dozens of turrets to line the walls. We're going to have them spaced but as close as we can manage, really, with the resources we have available. We're going to aim for having them as dense as they are on the defensive walls of Westpoint, and then we'll, at some point in the future, probably going to like implement some laser turrets in the gaps between or something like that if things continue to worsen, which they probably will. I imagine behemoth biters will turn up at some point. So I spent a while in the main base gathering up all the iron that it had available and all the gears to make a bunch of turrets, because they use up quite a lot of materials, particularly since 0.13 I think it was, or maybe it was 0.12. Actually no, it would have been 0.13, that's the one that's coming. It's either 0.12 or 0.11 where they increase the size of turrets and the amount that you needed to make them. So they are quite resource intensive, and so I end up going through, like, I think to make 20 of them it takes like 4 stacks of iron and copper and 2 stacks of gears or something like that. So we very quickly drain all the supplies of the main base. We go over to Chipton, drain those supplies as well, and then we go back to the main base again, because it's got the gear assembler, which we need a few more of. And I started building up a supply of gears in the car, because I realised I should have probably done that at some point a long while ago. Like, we've already got 5 stacks of circuits and advanced circuits in there, and gears sort of go hand in hand with circuits in a lot of crafting recipes. And I often use them when I'm out battling biters anyway, because of the repair packs using them. And we also need some of the supplies to make some miners, so that we can get a bit more copper mining going. I added in a bunch more miners, I think, at the end of last episode to Chipton, to keep the copper supply going, but it still wasn't quite enough. I think I ended up with there being 12 miners for 12 furnaces, which usually like isn't quite right. You usually want to go for a baker's dozen with that, and then you have like the ability for the belts to build up and things like that. And also it does seem like sometimes the furnaces run slightly slower than miners or something like that, or it might just be issues with miners where the output of one miner will block another one and stuff like that. But anyway, I just get the whole thing being mined, which is more than enough, and it should mean that we don't have to worry about that for a while. But it does show that we're starting to approach the time when Chipton will have to get its copper from elsewhere, and already the supply that it's got is not quite enough. The circuit line at the moment is it's full of gaps, and I don't think that's because of me like taking any circuits out. It was a long time since I did that, so I think it's just that at the moment science is using up circuits faster than they're being made, which isn't too much of an issue, because science is not doesn't need to rush right now. We're fine with it as it is, and it's well ahead of what we're doing at the moment. Like, the only things remaining to be researched are like boosts to speed and damage and stuff like that of things that we haven't even started building, like laser turrets and bots and capsules and things like that. But yeah, if we do want to start like getting a lot more production going, we will have to do something about Chipton, and if we do, we will need to get some extra copper from somewhere else. And there are a couple of places sort of in the southeast that I've been eyeing up that have some nice copper deposits in them we could make use of, that should keep things going for a while. I don't think I'll have to worry about like setting up one town and it being sort of a permanent thing, like with Iron Outpost 2 in Rail World and things like that, because you really do burn through copper quite quickly. Like in Rail World, we very rapidly ran out of all the nearby copper deposits, and we ended up going for the giant one miles out by the lake. But anyway, we're making our way down to Westpoint, and as we go, we're fitting some lights to the the power lines is something I didn't bother with for like the first time round. I was just getting the actual power transported over so I could get the defensive system properly running. And now we're putting a little bit more time into it, lighting it up so we can see where we're going whenever we're driving this way. And at some point we'll also put in some signals, but it's not particularly urgent at the moment because there is only one train that visits here, the one from Forton. And it's only once there are multiple that you need to worry about that too much. And even so, it would just mean that the trains would have to wait a while before they would actually set off. And still wouldn't cause anything to actually break. But anyway, we've arrived and we've got all of the supplies we need to start setting up our first defensive line. So we'll just start it from the lake, from the sort of outermost point of it. And I've decided to have the wall further beyond like the town from its own defensive wall, just so that it's sort of like a 2 lines of defense situation. Because if we do rely on like one line, then there's a lot more chance of something going wrong, of course. And there are a couple of weaknesses in the system. Like the automatic loading system is not perfect. If a biter blows up a belt, then its days are numbered and things like that. And we'd like usually respond to those. But if we didn't spot the alarm going off or we missed what it was about, then we might have a bit of trouble with it. Though, well, I was going to say though, and then sort of say that wouldn't happen. But actually, there are a couple of times in this episode where there are some explosions that I missed. The biters have been getting quite angry in recent times because I've been sort of like I've not been dealing with bases for a little bit, so they've been pushing forward again. We've got some new bases up in the northwest we'll have to deal with, and there's a couple like over in the east as well. And we have quite a few attacks on places, including multiple explosions. We end up with 2 explosions in Forton, which we go and deal with later on. And then there are, I think, 2 more, at least 1 more, that I didn't manage to check in time. And I think there's even a feature now where if you click on them, it immediately shows you on the map where it is. But I wasn't quick enough to respond to that or remember that it was a new feature. It's either a new feature in 0.12.30 or it's coming in 0.13, one of those. But anyway, we get the belt running along, we've got the turrets in place, and I found out a bit more about the problem we were having with some of the burner inserters like running out of fuel. It turns out that it wasn't sort of what I was thinking of, and actually the inserters do have nearly enough time to pick up 2 items. What was happening is that the belt with the coal and the ammo was running along, and then for one inserter, the coal and the ammo would appear at the same time, and it would go, well, I'll pick up the coal then, because my priority is always keeping myself fueled. So it picks up the coal, but then, of course, it means that the coal line is one behind the ammo line. So the next inserter sees ammo first, and usually it would go straight for coal if coal was available, but because it isn't, it goes for the ammo instead so it can actually do its job of loading. And because of that, it didn't have quite enough power to then pick up a piece of coal to fuel itself and ran out of power. So that's what it was. And it makes sense. It'd be nice if the burner inserters like would keep hold of their last bit of power rather than using it to load in the last bit of ammo. But then there are cases where you want it to be the other way around because like the turret needed 1 more piece of ammo to keep operating or something like that and save the day. And so it's sort of either way round something would go wrong, and that's the way that's been picked, and makes sense most of the time. And it's still only a problem when the system like initially sets up. As soon as it's got a piece of coal loaded in, it's fine forever as long as the coal supply doesn't run out for whatever reason. And we can always activate more miners if we're having a bit of trouble with the coal supply anyway. So we've made our way up to Forton, where you can see the result of some recent biter attacks. There have been 2 or maybe even 3 explosions. It might have been a burner inserter that was destroyed as well, I'm not quite sure. But I am a bit worried about where the other explosions happened. There might have been one in Colbury or something like that, because that would make sense considering the situation up here. What has happened is 2 bases have sprung up. One of them is very close to the corner of Forton, hence the 2 turrets blowing up. They've been attacking it from basically the perfect angle to exploit the weak point that I haven't bothered dealing with yet. The reason I haven't bothered like sorting out the corner turret is because I was planning on fixing things anyway, and I decided to move forward in time the fix I'm going to do so that we don't have any more trouble with that. Even so, the biters were coming up against the next turrets along and would still have had a fair bit of trouble in actually getting into the base. It would still have had to deal with like half a dozen turrets at least, I imagine, to make any sort of progress. So we start dealing with this one, and there is another one as well further along that is launching attacks on Colbury. Once again, a biter base has appeared in that area, but like sort of around like the midline between Forton and Redport that bypasses our defences, goes straight for Colbury, and always seems to be really good at like taking out turrets there. You may have spotted there, I messed up slightly as I did one of my attack runs. I managed to draw the attention of the very large base just to the north of this one, and end up with a turret being destroyed from just the sheer numbers that came after me. But yeah, the biters always seem to do damage when they attack Colbury. I'm always finding destroyed turrets and always like bolstering them by putting 2 more in their place, and then still I find like more turrets blown up next time I visit. And so I just really hate it when a base pops up in this particular area, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Anyway, we deal with both of these bases by using poison capsules. It works out quite well because they've got a very large number of worms on them. Though this one annoyingly has this one big worm that is sort of separate from the rest of the group, and manages to not even get hurt by the poison capsules. So once we deal with the bases, we just run that one over to sort that out. And we're back in the situation base-wise that we were in before, though the pollution is probably continuing to get worse as our doubling up of the ammo production continues. And of course, with us using the ammo and getting it sent to Westpoint and used on the wall, it's going to keep going for quite a while. Which is good. We want it to keep running, and like we'd rather have continuous low-level production than sporadic high-level production, because that would cause us more problems with sudden waves of pollution going out to the biters and making them particularly angry. But anyway, we start setting up a wall up in Forton. The plan for this episode was to just work fully on the one down in Westpoint, but the thing with Westpoint at the moment is that it's all quiet down there. The pollution is not like as far as the town, and there are biter bases sort of further to the south that are well inside pollution range and causing us trouble in Chipton and Southbridge and areas like that. But at the moment that situation is under control, except there may have been an explosion in Southbridge. I will have to go check that. And the situation is far worse at the moment in Forton. The biters are advancing here now, and the thing is, at the moment, for the moment before and now once again, we have the biters back as far as we want them, and we have the space we want to build the wall. Whereas with Westpoint, we still have to push the biters back a little bit more to put that in. So it's probably quicker and more effective if we just get this wall in place now. And that was the original plan for Forton. It was supposed to be the first of the defensive wall towns, but then because it was doing a good job of sort of attracting the attention of the biters anyway, I didn't bother with the wall. Now it's become clear that I do need it, and so we'll get it set up. And Westpoint can wait. Everything's fairly quiet there at the moment. Things are going to get worse once we go over to the quarry and use up the remaining stone. Though actually, I think the quarry's pretty much shut down at this point. Though we do need to start mining stone from Westpoint itself, at which point there will be more trouble with biters. But of course, we'll be mining the stone to be turned immediately into walls so that we can then set up the defences, hopefully before the pollution draws the biters in. Anyway, even as I'm working on this wall, you can see biters running past it to get to Forton, and I realise I should stop, like, slowly making my way along and doing things, like getting the wall fully set up in little sections. I should instead try and just get the whole wall partially operational before the biters just run along and start blowing up bits of it while I'm still working on another part. So I decided to sort of halve the spacing, or halve the density, I don't know, the frequency of the turrets along the wall for the moment, because we don't have enough materials to get the wall as far as I want it with what we have. So I just space, I put a gap of 6 between each one, and I place all the turrets so that it's easier to eyeball where exactly everything needs to go until we've used up all that we have, and we nearly get to where I'm aiming for. I siphoned off a belt of ammo and coal to come out the north wall of Forton, and I'm aiming to sort of line up with that, at which point we'll be defending against the worst of the bases, though there are some attacks at some point in this episode. There's one on the south wall of Forton from a base coming in from sort of the southwest of there, and I will continue the wall around. I'll get that set up, but this is the sort of more urgent bit, because this is where the biters are actually colonising to. At the moment there's been very little to sort of the west of Forton, and a lot more from the north, where they're constantly trying to take a stab at knocking out the defences in Colbury, which I'm not going to allow anymore. But yeah, we'll get all these in place. We'll get all of them loaded with 10 ammo, which is a little bit more awkward than loading everything with 25 like I do when I'm turret creeping. But we'll get that sorted, then we'll start extending the belt along as far as we can, just so we have some automatic loading on the sort of worst affected parts, and then we'll go back and resupply and continue with that. And I think like I'll probably go back to Westpoint after doing just this stretch, because this will sort of defend against the worst bit. As I was saying, this is where they're actually colonising, and they're still trying to colonise down in the southwest, and we want to sort of just go to wherever the biters are trying to advance the most, and draw the line in each case. So we get the wall, I think, nearly up to where we want to go, and you can see already it's been being attacked while we were putting in the ammo in what some of the turrets. Other turrets were already being attacked, and when we came along, there were already 2 that had been damaged because we hadn't had time to put the wall in yet. But you can see the biters still getting past the wall and going straight for the town, so we'll extend things a little bit further so the wall should catch all the attacks from the north. And it doesn't seem like they're coming from sort of the northwest so much, because the biter bases are a little bit further away there. There's sort of 2 main offenders from the north of Forton, and I think one of them's not too big. I could probably deal with it, but the other one is quite an extensive one. It's sort of a multi-complex sort of thing. There's like 3 different bases all mushed together that I just don't want to deal with. We'll deal with it once we have a power suit and we can just run in and annihilate them all. And until then, we can defend against their colonization parties. So there was one of the alarms. There was an explosion. I got onto the map before the explosion alarm had disappeared, but by the time I zoomed out, it had disappeared. So I'm not sure where that happened, and I'll have to look at that later. I would guess that that one was Southbridge, based on the sort of situation. We've now cordoned off Colbury, so it can't be there. So I imagine Southbridge is the one that got hit, because that usually seems to be... Well, actually, I guess West Chipton also gets... exploded quite often. It's somewhere in the Chipton area. That's the usual offender. It's the one making a lot more pollution than most of our towns, and it's the one that the biters love to run straight for when they're attacking. So we start putting this belt in place. I'm being a bit more careful with how I place the burner inserters. Basically, I'm trying to make sure that they always have access to coal as soon as they're placed, just because it saves a few seconds of like manually loading them with coal and stuff like that. And I'm basically burning through my entire supply of iron and gears to get this in place. I think I also like grab a bunch of gears from the car to make my iron go further. I think I need to start carrying more than 2 stacks of gears, because I'm burning through them so quickly, particularly with what I'm doing in this playthrough with all the turrets and the belts and the inserters that I'm having to craft manually. And I know I could set up towns for them, but I'll do that at some point. We'll get there. Once we've got the defences in place, we'll have a lot more freedom to expand our county a little bit further. And I'm probably going to be expanding a lot more into the east, because that seems a lot more inviting. There's not harsh desert full of angry biters and a significant lack of pollution absorption. And there's also some more lakes beyond the ones that we already have that we could that make defenses a little bit easier. And yes, I'll probably expand further than Ironwood and start branching off from Newton and Flaskmere in that area. Not Flaskmere, yeah, it's Newton. Newton's the one. Towards the southeast as well. Because there'll be a lot less maintenance to do in terms of dealing with biters over there. It's a much more inviting bit of terrain. But anyway, we went back to Forton to sort out supplies and stuff, where I find that we have a bit of an issue with the iron supply. A bunch of the miners have run out, and we no longer have all of the furnaces running, which means we need to start bringing in iron from elsewhere. I helped the situation for the moment by dumping a bunch of steel there, because I ended up accidentally having a bunch extra because I was messing about in the main base. I turned off some of the steel furnaces, because at the moment we're using only a very small amount of steel from the main base, whereas we need a lot more iron. And there's only one furnace that actually just makes iron, and we also have it being turned into gears and things like that, which is why we had so much trouble with the supply. So we deactivated 2 of the steel furnaces and ended up having a bunch of extra steel because of it. So we loaded that in, and that should help the system continue to function okay for a short while we sort out an alternative solution. And of course the alternative solution will be something that we've had set up for a while. It will be the town of Ironwood. We set it up ages ago to supply places with iron before realising nowhere really needed iron. We ended up supplying a little bit to Frackham because it needed it for making, I don't know, batteries or sulfuric acid or something like that. So now the town will finally have a proper job to do. So we increased the capacity a bit to 10 stacks per cargo wagon, and it will get it being sent to Forton. Set up some sort of unloading system in the next episode in Forton so that we can keep the system running. And it will mean less pollution in Forton because it will only have half the furnaces and less less mining drills, though it will mean more pollution in Ironwood, which is quite the issue because Ironwood does not have the defences to deal with that. It has 2 turrets and an incomplete wall, and I want to keep the trees as they are, so I'll have to sort of work out some way of doing that. Either I'll just push the biters back, or I'll find a way to snake the wall through the trees or something like that. But we get the train set off and we finish for today, and I shall say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time.